What do you do when the people who created you pretend you don't exist? Yes, that's about me. My biological parents ditched me like trash when I was a baby. But 28 years later, they were forced to sit front row and watch me torch their perfect little lie, live, on national TV, with a mic in one hand and receipts in the other. My name's Jason. I'm 28. I've spent most of my life watching other people win while I cleaned up the mess. Foster homes, hand-me-down dreams, and a whole lot of being told I should be grateful. Spoiler, I wasn't. I never had a real family, but I certainly learned how to act like I did. Let's dive into it. I used to think I was just unlucky. Like, statistically cursed. Maybe I tripped some karmic wire before birth and landed straight into the human version of a return bin. First memory I have. A woman with thin lips says I talk too much for a foster kid. I was 5. Apparently, silence is the preferred vibe for unwanted children. From 5 to 17, I cycled through 5 different foster homes. None of them were physically abusive, just emotionally vacant in that cheerfully manipulative way. You know, the we're doing God's work types who'd post smiling selfies with me for the church bulletin, then lock up the fridge at night because food wasn't free. One home had a guy who made us call him sir and lectured me on gratitude every time I breathed too loudly. Another woman, Deborah, cried every time I asked about my real parents. You're hurting me when you say things like that, Jason. Oh, sorry, Deborah. Let me rephrase. Why did 2 adults bring me into the world and then vanish like I was a clerical error? School wasn't much better. Teachers either pitted me or treated me like a ticking bomb. I learned early that being invisible was safer until it wasn't. One day in high school, during lunch, this senior named Olivia made fun of a freshman girl's stutter. Something in me snapped, maybe hunger, maybe repressed trauma, maybe both, and I roasted her in front of everyone. Loud. Savage. The whole cafeteria went nuts. Phones came out. Video hit Snapchat. For once, I wasn't invisible. I was a damn headliner. That same week, I got called into the drama department. I thought I was about to get detention. Instead, this wiry old dude named Coach Ben just said, "That was some monologue. Ever thought about acting?" I laughed. Like, I had time for hobbies between survival mode and insomnia. But he insisted. Gave me a script. Pushed me into tryouts. I didn't get the lead. I wasn't clean-cut enough, but I landed a role. Turns out, rage is marketable when you memorize it. Drama class became my escape. It was the first place I got to be someone, or better yet, not be myself. Coach Ben kept telling me I had something raw. I didn't care what that meant. I just knew when I was on stage, people actually listened. Nobody looked past me like I was a smudge on glass. Fast forward to senior year. Thanks to Coach Ben's relentless pushing and a low-key miracle, I got a performing arts scholarship to a community college. Still lived out of a garbage apartment and worked nights to survive, but it was something. A direction. Maybe even a future. Then came my 18th birthday. When you're adopted, or, in my case, practically abandoned into the system, you can request access to your original records at 18. I wasn't sure I even wanted to. What was the point? But curiosity's a persistent bastard. So I filled out the paperwork, paid the processing fee, and waited. The envelope came on a Thursday. I remember because I had just bombed a callback audition and was halfway into a pity burrito. I opened it with 0 expectations and way too much salsa on my fingers. Inside, names, birth certificates, a hospital record, and a closed adoption agreement. And there it was. Heather and Mark. Married. Living 3 counties away. Occupations, author and business owner. Ages, early 40s. So yeah, they didn't die. They didn't lose custody. They weren't forced into anything. They just dropped me, ditched the kid like a bad first draft, and started over. And from the looks of their address and income declaration, they were doing just fine. It hit me like a punch. Not just because they were alive, but because they chose not to find me. I existed this whole time. Same state. Same goddamn time zone. And they went on with their shiny little life like I was a bad dream they didn't talk about. I dug deeper. Social media is great for stalking people who tried to erase you. Turns out, they had 2 other kids. My half-siblings, I guess. Tyler and Olivia. Yes, that Olivia. The same name as Cafeteria Roast Girl. Life's twisted like that. They had photos of Disney trips, Christmas in matching pajamas, and fundraisers for the local pet shelter. One post had Heather posing with a Bible and the caption, "God gave me the gift of motherhood." I strive to be worthy of it every day. I nearly threw up. Lady, you had the gift, then threw it out like expired yogurt. I thought about reaching out, sending an email, showing up, screaming in their faces. But none of it felt satisfying enough. It felt too small, too easy for them to twist into a sob story. We were young. We weren't ready. We didn't know. I didn't want answers. I wanted accountability. So I waited, planned, let the anger sharpen into something useful. I started journaling, writing scenes. I turned my entire life into scripts, not to process it, but to own it. I'd perform pieces based on my real memories, disguised just enough for the stage. Coaches loved it. Audiences cried. One teacher said I had trauma gold. Great. Maybe I could melt it down and pay rent. By the time I was 22, I had auditioned for over 40 roles and booked maybe 6. I kept going, not because I loved the grind, but because I was building something. A platform, a voice, something loud enough that even people trying not to listen couldn't ignore it. They threw me away like I was disposable. I was about to become broadcast-worthy. I used to think stalking your biological parents online was the kind of thing reserved for emotionally unstable exes or true crime documentaries. Turns out, it's also what you do when you're the bastard they tossed out like a burned pancake, and you finally learn their names. So yeah, I went full cyber sleuth. Heather and Mark. Heather had rebranded herself into this Pinterest-perfect, God-fearing mom with just the right touch of mommy blogger sanctimony. Her Instagram was a pastel vomit of DIY crafts, school lunch inspo, and gentle parenting quotes that would be hilarious if they weren't so enraging. Her bio? Faith, family, forgiveness, following God's path, one blessed day at a time. Right. The woman who ghosted her own child was out here hashtagging #momgoals. Every time I saw her smiling next to her kids, my half-siblings, I had to resist the urge to hurl my phone across the room. Then there was Mark, Mr. All-American Dad. He owned a car dealership that specialized in affordable luxury and was some kind of minor sponsor for local theater productions. The kind where his name gets printed on the playbill right below special thanks. The same guy who didn't even bother to check if the son he made was still breathing now liked to give back to the arts. Fantastic. They had a beautiful house. Suburbs, of course. Huge backyard. Dog named Murphy, his and hers bikes mounted on the garage wall. 2 kids. Tyler, who looked like the kind of guy who peak achieved in high school, and Olivia, who was an honor student, homecoming queen, and future cult leader by the look of her overachieving grin. Christmas cards, 4th of July BBQs, and matching family t-shirts for charity runs. They were like a Hallmark movie if Hallmark movies had a secret they'd rather die than admit. But here's the thing, I wasn't jealous. Not exactly. I wasn't looking for their love anymore. That ship had not only sailed, it had caught fire, sunk, and been eaten by deep-sea resentment. What pissed me off was the lie. The smooth, curated, hypocritical lie. These people didn't just move on. They flourished while pretending their firstborn didn't exist. And they preached about values the whole time. Community. Faith. Sacrifice. Bullshit. They sacrificed nothing. I did. They got the clean slate. I got bounced from home to home, faking smiles for caseworkers and eating expired canned soup. They had a Bible study. I had to learn how to pick a lock because one foster dad thought I stole his weed and locked me in the laundry room all night. But the worst part? They got away with it. Legally, socially, emotionally. There was no consequence, no punishment, no accountability. Just photo filters and PDA meetings and Heather telling her podcast listeners that being a mother is the greatest gift of all. That's when I knew I wouldn't reach out. Not yet. I wasn't going to send them a letter or call or show up on their porch with big wet eyes and a trembling voice. No, they didn't deserve a redemption arc. I was going to do the opposite. I was going to make sure they couldn't ignore me, that their entire network of brunch friends, business clients, and wholesome suburban followers would know exactly what kind of people they actually were. But to do that, I needed to become someone. Not just Jason, angry adult orphan, but someone loud, someone visible, someone whose voice couldn't be muted or misquoted. So I started documenting everything. Dates, addresses, social media posts, old foster records, every bit of data I could collect. I saved screenshots, printed duplicates, and stored copies on 3 different drives. I even recorded my own memories on video, talking head style, just so I could capture the raw version before emotion sanitized it. I wrote monologues about it. Not just scenes for school, but pieces of storytelling so personal they practically bled. I performed them at open mics, student showcases, and even a couple of indie theater nights downtown. People felt them. A few cried. One woman came up to me after a show and said, "I gave up my baby at 16. I wish he could see what you've done." I nodded politely. Internally, I wanted to ask her how it felt to sleep at night. Each performance became sharper, more refined. I stopped doing generic roles. If a director handed me some bland, emotionally neutered side character, I would walk. I wanted the main stage. I wanted center stage. And not because I needed the applause. I needed the audience. By 25, I was broke, exhausted, and completely unwilling to give up. My therapist, one of the only good things foster care ever connected me with, once said I had high-functioning vengeance issues. She wasn't wrong. I auditioned constantly, worked shit jobs to pay rent, networked like hell, even though I hated small talk. Most of the time, nothing landed. But every now and then, I'd book something small, a college tour gig, a featured role in a web series, a lead in a short film shot with a budget made of ramen and favors. And then, it happened. One of my clips went viral. Just a grainy recording of a solo performance where I laid it all bare. Foster care, abandonment, betrayal. I didn't even name them. I didn't have to. It was raw enough to hit. People shared it, commented, reached out. Producers called. I got invited to audition for Center Stage, Next Icon, a nationally televised acting competition with just enough drama to feel exploitative and just enough prestige to change lives. Perfect. The timing was cosmic. I had the story. I had the fuel. And now, I had a stage big enough to make sure Heather and Mark couldn't pretend anymore. This time, I wasn't knocking on their door. I was kicking it in, getting onto Center Stage. Next Icon felt like a fluke. A glitch in the universe that accidentally let someone like me into the building. The audition was a blur, cold hallway, crap coffee, and 20 other actors doing vocal warm-ups like they were prepping for the Royal Opera. Meanwhile, I was sitting in the corner with my earbuds in, replaying the same 3-minute monologue I'd been hammering for weeks. It was about a boy abandoned in a hospital parking lot. Wonder where I got the inspiration. I went in, gave it everything, and left sweating through my thrift store blazer. Thought nothing would come of it. A week later, I got the call back. 2 weeks after that, I was in the cast. National broadcast. Millions of viewers. All the producers wanted was for me to bring raw emotional honesty and a compelling journey. Oh honey, I had plenty of both. The show was a mix of performance challenges, rehearsals, and confessionals. Think American Idol meets therapy session, but with better lighting. Each week, we performed a monologue or scene in front of a live audience and a panel of experts, a retired soap star, a Broadway actor with 6 Tonys, and a YouTuber who cried on cue. I started strong. Not because I was polished, I wasn't. I didn't have their years of vocal training or movement workshops. What I had was pain I hadn't sanded down. And audiences could smell that. I didn't cry pretty. I didn't speak in poetic metaphors. I just said it how it happened. And it hit. Until it didn't. Week 4, I wrote a monologue about the first time I realized my foster mom only took me in for the stipend. I made the audience laugh, then dropped dead silent. It was the best thing I'd ever done. Raw, bitter, uncomfortable. The kind of truth that makes people squirm. I thought they'd eat it up. But when the episode aired, they'd edited the whole thing down to a sappy redemption arc, cut out the sarcasm, trimmed the rage, replaced the gut punch, ending with some stock footage of me smiling backstage. The voiceover said I was grateful for second chances. I nearly threw my remote at the wall. I asked a producer what the hell that was. She said, "We're selling hope, Jason. Your story is incredible. We just have to shape it for prime time." Translation, don't scare the audience. Right. Because nothing says hope like a kid tossed out like trash. I knew then that they didn't want my story. They wanted ownership of it. And that wasn't going to happen. Things got worse when one of the contestants, Sandra, decided I was a threat to her screen time. She had one of those Disney villain smiles and a tragic backstory that somehow involved ballet, bankruptcy, and betrayal by a best friend. Very marketable. Except she didn't have the kind of trauma you could weaponize on stage. So she tried to ruin me. I came back from a rehearsal one night and found my locker wide open. Inside, a printed copy of a Reddit thread speculating about my birth parents. Someone had posted screenshots from a forum where people were trying to guess who my biological family was based on clues from the show. And Sandra just happened to find it. I confronted her. She denied everything, of course, smiled sweetly, and said, "It must be so hard having your trauma become public content." I nearly decked her. Instead, I walked out, took a train back to my apartment, didn't answer calls for 2 days. But I wasn't quitting. If they wanted a performance, I'd give them one. Unfiltered, uncut. I sat down and rewrote my next piece from scratch. No metaphors, no disguises. Just me. Just the truth. I tore into everything. Abandonment, hypocrisy, fake forgiveness, performative parenting. I wrote it like a court deposition mixed with a roast. I rehearsed it until my voice cracked. Brought it to the director and said, "This is what I'm doing." He hesitated. Said it might be too intense. I told him I wasn't asking. When I stepped onto the stage that week, I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I looked dead into the camera and said, "My parents told the world they were pro-life. They just weren't pro-my life." You could hear a pin drop. It went viral before the credits even rolled. People on Twitter, sorry, X, or whatever the hell it's called now, were quoting lines within minutes. DMs flooded in. Survivors, adoptees, angry teens, social workers, even a few birth parents who said it made them rethink everything. One message just said, "I saw you. Thank you." Even the judges couldn't fake neutrality. One of them stood up. Another one had tears in her eyes. The third, the YouTuber, looked like he'd been hit by a truck. I made it to the finals. And then the real shitstorm hit. Because with all that visibility came exposure. People started looking for my parents. They connected the dots. My old Reddit monologue. The family photos. Heather's public podcast. Mark's dealership ads. One internet sleuth even found my original sealed adoption case file. How? I don't even want to know. And guess who slid into my inbox the next morning? Yep, Heather. Subject line, "We're so proud of you, son." I laughed for 5 full minutes. Because the story wasn't just viral now. It was spreading. And they were finally in the blast zone. The subject line alone made me want to throw my laptop out the window. "We're so proud of you, son." Oh, now I'm a son? That's rich. No, Jason. No, we'd like to talk. No, sorry, we yeeted you out of our lives like a wet Kleenex. Just instant, cheery, fake parent bullshit like we were a Hallmark family on pause for 28 years. I didn't open the email. I didn't have to. Just seeing it was enough to boil my blood. They hadn't said a word my entire life. Not one. I had almost died twice in foster care. Slept on concrete. Got shoved into therapy by a woman who thought dreams meant demons. And suddenly, I'm on TV, and now Heather and Mark want a seat at the table? Nah, not even close. I deleted the email. Immediately. Then screenshot it. And sent it to a locked folder titled Receipts. Just in case. 2 days later, they showed up. No warning. No heads up. Just casually appeared backstage during a live rehearsal of the semifinal episode like they'd been invited. I was walking off set when I saw them. Mark in his try-hard blazer, Heather with her over-accessorized mom necklace, and a smile like she'd never abandoned a single soul. "Oh my God," she said, arms already out for a hug. "Look at you." I froze. I don't remember what I said first, but I do remember thinking, if a security guard doesn't remove these people in the next 60 seconds, I'm about to get arrested on camera. They looked older, softer, like time had dulled their edges, but their egos still sparkled. Heather looked like she was mid-makeup tutorial, and Mark kept doing that weird half-smile rich men use when they think they're being charming, but are actually just smug. "We just wanted to talk," Heather said, voice sweet as corn syrup. "We saw your performance. We had no idea you were in so much pain." Bullshit. They chose not to know. There's a difference. "We thought about you every day," Mark added. "Right. That's why you never looked. Never called. Never even posted a vague, thinking of someone special tweet. They thought about me the way people think about flossing, when guilt shows up and then disappears 5 minutes later." I didn't say much. Just stared. Let them ramble. Then I pulled out my phone and hit record. Quietly. Casually. I didn't trust a single syllable coming out of their mouths. And if they were going to paint themselves as loving victims later, I wanted evidence. Heather did most of the talking. About how young they were. How scared. How their church told them it was best. How they always meant to reconnect. But the timing never felt right. She dropped the word forgiveness 6 times. Mark mostly nodded and pretended to look emotional. The kicker? She actually said, "We'd love to be a part of your journey now." I swear I almost laughed. My journey? You had your chance. You booked a one-way ticket out of my life when I was a baby and never looked back. Now you want back in because there's a camera pointed at me? I let them talk. Let them hang themselves with their own rope. Then I excused myself, politely, and sent the recording to that same locked folder. Later that night, I got a message request on Instagram. From Tyler, my half-brother. It was short. Just, "Hey, I saw what's going on. I always knew something was off. If you want to talk, I'm here." I stared at that message for a while. He wasn't responsible for what our parents did. Neither was Olivia. And I wasn't in the business of punishing people just because they shared DNA. But I also didn't know if I could trust him. I left it on read. For now. Instead, I focused on the finale. Because the producers were eating this all up. They'd seen the backstage run-in on the security cam footage. One of them literally said, "This is Emmy-worthy." Gross, but useful. I told them I had a piece for the finale, one I'd written myself. I wanted to perform it unedited. No cuts. No fake voiceover. Just me, living, saying what needed to be said. They were hesitant at first, but the numbers didn't lie. My last performance had gone viral. People were tuning in because of the rawness. And honestly, they didn't care about me. They cared about the ratings. So they agreed. And I got to work. The final piece wasn't a monologue. Not really. It was a goddamn autopsy. A breakdown of abandonment wrapped in sarcasm and rage. I didn't just talk about being left behind. I talked about why people do it. The shame, the cowardice, the fear of being inconvenient. I didn't name Heather and Mark, but I didn't need to. Anyone with 2 brain cells and a Wi-Fi connection could fill in the blanks. I rehearsed like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. This wasn't just about a show. This was my stage. My story. For once, I wasn't letting anyone else narrate it. I didn't care if they cried. I didn't care if they clapped. I just wanted them to hear it. When the night of the finale came, I wasn't nervous. I was locked in. Heather and Mark were in the audience. Of course they were. Front row, dressed for redemption, looking like they were hoping the camera would catch just the right angle of their pained but supportive expressions. But they weren't getting a reunion. They were getting a reckoning. The lights dimmed. The host did their usual dramatic pauses. The judges grinned like they hadn't just spent the last hour fake crying for ad revenue. But I wasn't looking at them. I was looking straight into the camera. And I started speaking. Not with a sob story. Not with a pre-written, sanitized TV script. With the truth. Raw and bloody. "My name is Jason," I said, voice steady, mic warm in my hand. And I wasn't supposed to be here. The crowd went dead silent. That's how I knew it was working. I wasn't born into a support system. I was dropped like a hot coal and passed around like bad furniture. I didn't have bedtime stories or birthday parties. I had closed doors, social workers, and a constant voice in my head asking, "What the hell is wrong with me?" I let that hang. Heather was already blinking fast. Mark stiffened. Good. I found out, when I turned 18, that I wasn't an orphan. I wasn't the result of a tragedy. I was a problem. An inconvenience. A mistake. Something to be erased so 2 people could go live their best lives without me. There were gasps in the audience. A couple of producers shifted nervously in the wings. One of the judges leaned forward, clearly not expecting me to come in swinging like that. "Those people," I said, never naming names, "built a new family. A perfect one. A shiny, photogenic one. I watched them from a distance, the way you stare at a house you'll never afford. Except it wasn't the house I wanted. It was the place at the table." Pause. But I stopped begging for one. I stopped waiting to be chosen. And I chose myself. Applause rippled, soft at first. The real kind. Not the forced kind. I smiled just barely. I found something no one could take from me. My voice. My craft. My story. And tonight, I'm not asking to be accepted. I'm here to be heard. By every kid who's ever been left behind and told to be grateful. By every adult still carrying that weight. Then I delivered the monologue. The one I'd written late at night in a shitty studio apartment with holes in the ceiling. The one that dug into the marrow of everything. Abandonment, rejection, resilience, revenge. It wasn't theatrical. It was surgical. When I finished, the audience stood. Every single one. Except for 2 people in the front row. Heather looked like she'd seen a ghost. Mark looked like he wanted to disappear into the chair. Their clapping came late, awkward, and more about appearances than support. Didn't matter, because the world had just heard me say everything they tried to erase. I walked off stage and didn't look back. An hour later, we were down to the final two. Me and a guy named Cam, a beatboxer from Boston with the kind of charisma that made toddlers and old ladies cheer in unison. He was good. Like, seriously good. But I wasn't nervous. Because I'd already won. Not the money. Not the trophy. The damn narrative. Still, when they called my name, it hit like thunder. Jason, winner of the entire season. The place exploded. Confetti rained. Fireworks flared. I got hugged by strangers and kissed by someone I vaguely remembered from episode 3. Cam gave me a bro hug and whispered, "You earned this," which I'll admit, almost made me cry. Almost. They tried to shove a mic in my face for a reaction shot. I just said, "Guess I was good enough after all," and winked. Petty? A little. Satisfying. Immensely. Backstage, everything moved fast. Press. Photos. Executive producers gushing about the journey, like they hadn't tried to cut my solo just 3 days earlier. I nodded, smiled, took my trophy, and kept walking. Heather and Mark cornered me by the loading bay. "We're proud of you," Heather said, trembling like she was about to faint. "Really proud," Mark echoed. "You were amazing up there." I stared at them. Didn't say a word. They both waited, expecting what? Gratitude? A tearful hug? What they got was a polite smile, and, "Thanks for watching." Then I got in the car. Later that week, the episode aired. Uncut. Exactly as I performed it. My inbox exploded. Offers. Fan letters. News articles. DMs from people who said they finally felt seen. Even a few old foster siblings reached out. And Tyler messaged again. He said, "I watched the whole thing. You were right. They lied to us, too. I'm sorry. I'd still like to talk." This time I replied. I didn't know where that conversation would go, if it'd be closure, chaos, or something new. But he wasn't part of the cover-up. He wasn't the one who ghosted a child. And maybe he deserved a chance to know the brother he never got. As for Heather and Mark, they disappeared just as fast as they'd shown up. Apparently, the public didn't take too kindly to parents trying to claim a grown son after he dragged them in front of millions. They tried to do interviews. Damage control. But I never named them. That was the beauty of it. They burned themselves, with nothing but my truth and their own shame to keep them warm. After the confetti faded and the lights went cold, I expected the silence to hit me hard. But it didn't. It felt like exhaling for the first time in years. I didn't wake up feeling empty or unsure, like most people warned would happen after the big win. I woke up with a sense of clarity. For the first time, I wasn't chasing anything. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't running from some invisible shame. I was just me, Jason, winner, survivor, a little petty, deeply stubborn, but standing. Offers poured in. Agents I'd never heard of suddenly loved my energy. A streaming service wanted to option my life story for a gritty limited series. One producer pitched a reunion episode where I reconnect with my birth parents on camera. I laughed in their face. No one was turning my pain into content. Not again. That chapter had already aired, raw, unfiltered, and on my terms. Instead, I did something reckless. I said no to almost everything. Not because I didn't want success, but because I didn't want it to own me. I took a smaller offer from an indie studio doing an offbeat play about found family and identity. It paid half as much, and I loved every second of it. The world didn't see me as a charity case anymore. They saw me as a performer, an artist, a person. Imagine that. One afternoon, while walking to rehearsal, I passed a bakery with an open window and that buttery cinnamon smell that stops you mid-step. I was about to keep going when I saw someone inside. Tyler, my brother. Biological, anyway. He was sitting at a window seat, hands wrapped around a coffee mug, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 5 weeks. We made eye contact. He gave a nervous half-wave. I walked in. We talked for hours. About nothing and everything. About his childhood, the one I didn't get. About mine, the one he was shocked to hear in detail. He wasn't defensive. He didn't try to fix it. He just listened. "I didn't know," he said finally. "Not until I watched you." "I'm sorry." I nodded. "I'm not mad at you." "Are you mad at them?" I considered it. I'm done being mad. It's like drinking poison and hoping they choke. We sat there in silence, both unsure of what came next. But when he asked if we could meet again, just as people, no expectations, I said yes. Because maybe not everything broken stays that way. Months passed. I did more projects. Built real friendships. Got therapy. Like actual, sit-on-a-couch therapy. Not the write sad poetry and punch walls kind. I learned I didn't need a perfect origin story to be whole. I learned I didn't have to keep bleeding to be believed. I even got a dog. Named him Oscar, because of course I did. One night, after the opening night of a new show, I stood outside the theater while strangers came up to congratulate me. But one girl, maybe 16, walked up slowly, holding something in her hands. It was a drawing of me on stage, with the words, "Not broken, built different." She said, "I'm adopted, too. They told me I'd never find myself. But watching you made me think maybe I can." And just like that, the pain that had once consumed me felt like it had a purpose. Not because I won, not because I hurt people back, but because I turned what tried to destroy me into something that lit the way for someone else. Heather and Mark? They disappeared into the internet void. No statements, no reconciliations, no lawsuits. Just silence. And I was fine with that. They gave me nothing. Tried to take even less. But they couldn't take this. My life. My voice. My win.